This is a special episode of You the People. Each week, we three Canadians talk about you, the people. Your politics, your political system, your presidential debates, and yes, your upcoming election. And with me, as always, Corey Hogan, Stephen Carter. Guys, what the hell?
Zain, you know me. I'm a scholar of history. American history is a particular passion of mine. I struggle to recall another debate where a candidate used his time to tell armed militias to disrupt elections and violently take to the streets to protest the results. I don't remember that. Now, admittedly, I'm a little shaky on late 19th century, but I kind of feel that we're in some uncharted territory here. And like everything from the stagecraft to the content was just capital F, capital U, capital C, capital K, fucked. That was an hour and a half that will haunt me for the rest of my days.
You're not, this is not hyperbole or exaggeration from you. I can see it on your face. You're actually, like, legitimately pissed off about this.
How could you not be pissed off about this? It's not even my country, and I'm pissed off about it. I sure feel the border is a little closer today and a little more alarming to me, but, boy, you know, it's like a bad dream.
Pissed off doesn't even come close, though. Pissed off doesn't come close. I feel physically ill. I feel ill for two reasons. One, I watched that shit show. And two, I'm seeing how people are reacting to that shit show. And both of those things have me feeling physically ill. You know,
tell us about both of those things.
Well, watching it was gross. You know, Corey's point about the white supremacy takes that Trump was putting out there, his inability to follow the very simple rules that were put forward and agreed to by his campaign, the Biden name calling, you know, I don't know what that was about. I mean, we cautioned from this podcast that that type of behavior wasn't going to play. It did not play. It was like a grade school fight being moderated by, you know, a grade 2 kid. Like, it was just ridiculous. The questions were barely articulated. I mean, the whole thing was a gong show. And then now I'm watching the response. And the response is, well, you know, it was almost a draw. You know, Biden didn't look good either. Like, so you're in a cage with a baboon that's throwing shit around. How are you supposed to look good? Tell me how anybody looked good. Chris Wallace didn't look good. Trump didn't look good. Biden didn't look good. The American public didn't look good. The system, the debate, I can't remember what it's called. The debate starts with a C. Commission.
The commission. Yeah.
You know, they didn't look good. This was a shit show from start to finish. And the fact that it was allowed to occur on every national network in the United States, and that 100 million people are going to watch that. And did that make the world better? Did it make anything better? No, it was a gong show.
Corey, you know, I want to talk about the actual nuts and bolts of what we saw. But before that, to Carter's point, what are the ramifications here? Like, are we hyperbolic in terms of what people will look at this debate as, you know, is this the beginning of something else more broadly?
This isn't the beginning of anything. This has been going on for a long time. But, you know, it's like Chekhov's coup. Like, he's been talking about this for months. His behavior has foreshadowed this since when he was running originally in 2015. But sometimes you just have these moments that just slaps you in the face with what is. I guess I can just leave it there. And it is frustrating because it is a bit of a Rorschach test drawn with feces. We've got people on both sides saying their guy did well. Nobody did well there, but let's not create a false equivalency. Trump was a disaster of historic proportions tonight. Historic proportions. And, hey, I don't know if we just kind of skipped over the light banter. This might actually be as light as this podcast gets. I can't even tell. But this is something that it's going to take some time to process. And so we're recording this right after the debate ended, like half an hour. Yeah. I don't know about you two, but I did my best to avoid any of the instant analysis on this thing. But
yeah, I haven't heard anything either.
But I think digesting this is going to be It's a big meal. Like, people are going to be thinking about this even in these kind of frenetic, let's jump to the next thing times for a few days.
Carter, let's start to perhaps try to make this a little bit more digestible with something you brought up, which I felt like was perhaps not the reason we had a shit show, but certainly didn't prevent the shit show, which was the moderation of this debate. And I think I want to start here because we had the commission outline the 6 topics. We had Chris Wallace choose the questions for each topic. A lot of criticism for him up front for not going with COVID, the most, salient and important issues. But then it kind of broke down for him, even at one point in the debate, saying to the president, I'm going to ask you about race, but feel free to take your time and answer on whatever the hell you want, which I thought was just so freaking strange to give that sort of runway. So, Carter, maybe let's just start with your overarching thoughts and comments on the moderation that we saw tonight, and then we'll get into the candidates.
Well, I mean, the moderator was prepared for a normal debate. He brought his questions. He had his follow-up questions. He was prepared to go 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there. I mean, how is that the way you've prepared? Did you not watch the debates from 2016? Have you not seen the press conferences where the president has behaved the way the president has behaved? For me, this was a miscarriage of planning and opportunity by Chris Wallace and the commission, because I think that you're preparing for a normal debate of give and take that has been taken. You go back to the debates, whether it's in Canada or the United States, this debate format exists because it traditionally works fairly well. You get 2 minutes, I get 2 minutes. Sometimes it's 90 seconds, sometimes it's 60 seconds, but the rules are followed by the various campaigners. There was no rules. And then when the moderator tried to enforce the rules, the president of the United States, let's just take a moment for that, because you're expecting Chris Wallace to stand up to the president of the United States and hold the president of the United States accountable to answering questions and maintaining respect for his opposition and respect for the process. It didn't happen. It couldn't happen. And now, I'm looking at the next 3, well, not the vice presidential debate, because I don't think it'll be a shit show like this, but my God, the next 2 presidential debates, who is the moderator that can hold Donald Trump to account? Who's the one? I mean, outside of yourself, Zain, outside of Zain Velji.
Zain just gestured to himself.
I'll do it. Okay, thank you.
Could you imagine getting that call? You're the one. You're the one who now has to keep the president of the United States on track. And then Joe Biden is just sitting there trying to, figure out how he's supposed to play within the rules. He also seemed to be prepared for the rules as though they were going to be implemented. That's a gong show. That's out the door. So I just think that if you're not preparing for a shit show in the next debates, then you're not prepared at all. And how is there not a microphone control? I mean, how is there not a band to play them off when they're done their 2-minute answers? Get a band to play. Turn off their microphone. It works at the Oscars. It'll work for this. But something has to be done because the man is uncontrollable using just words and common decency.
Corey, give me your assessment on Chris Wallace's performance tonight.
Well, I kind of disagree with Stephen. I don't think he did bad. And in fact, I was pretty satisfied with a couple of his interventions where he very forcefully told Trump effectively, what the fuck are you doing? And he went pretty far. This is a sitting U.S. president. And he effectively said, you're acting like a child in so many words. And one time when Trump was trying to create this kind of false equivalency between his interrupting and Joe Biden's, he said right there, he's like, no, you're doing an awful lot more of it. And he did go back and try to hold him to points and say, will you just say that you condemn the far-right violence in the streets? He's like, what words do you want? And he told him, and then Trump still refused to say it. I'm sure we've got to unpack that a bit. But and then at the end, when it was talking about, or when the question was about, would you tell your supporters to stand down, like just to wait for the results, wait for the system to play out, whether that be the counting, the courts, whatever, but disavow violence. That's even less extreme. I mean, what can I say about that? Before, I was deeply concerned Trump would try to create chaos with the courts. Now he seems to be even saying he'd go further than that. Like he wouldn't wait for the courts. Like that was alarming. And Zain, you have said, both on this pod and on our other pod, The Strategist, that Trump has this habit of telling the truth about the future and lies about the past, which I think is just spot on. Trump said near the end, this isn't going to end well, and I take him at his word. But not to divert as bad as the candidates did, to your question about Wallace, what do you do with a man like that? I think he did as well as one could, and in fact, I'm kind of worried about the next two debates in the sense that I don't believe the moderators will be as strong as Wallace. They'll be more prepared, they'll have the game tape, but unless something fundamentally changes, I don't know. Because you can't prepare for the rules, as you have both sort of alluded to here. And by the way, this is a microcosm of Trump's entire political career in 90 minutes. He doesn't care about the rules. He doesn't care about the written rules. He doesn't care about the norms. He doesn't care about any of that shit if he thinks he can get an advantage. And this is true of a certain type of person, and that type of person, there's not a lot of merit in being on a stage with him. So I also don't think Biden was ill-prepared. In fact, many of his lines almost seemed canned, like, look at this clown, I mean person. That felt phony. But they were prepared, but there's no winning. And so I think fundamentally the error was going to these debates at all.
Carter, let's try to do this. I know it's going to be tough because of the unprecedented nature of this debate, but let's go through a bunch of segments from the debate, maybe not thematically, but how we analyze these debates and how we strategize for them as strategists. And let's start with stagecraft. Corey talked about the stagecraft being a total shit show overall. How did you make the stagecraft of the two candidates? The poise, the body language, how they presented. Let's perhaps start with Biden and then go both Biden and Trump with your response on stagecraft.
Well, I mean, Trump's hard to dissect because he's just a natural performer, right? Like, he's on the stage, he's saying whatever his lines are whatever pops into his head, and he's saying those words. I mean, his stagecraft around the climate change stuff and caring for the forests was, laughable. As someone who spends time outside, I'm not actually just going to go raking the forest today. It's a joke. But whatever. I mean, but let's take a moment and talk about Biden, because Biden's strongest moments, to my thinking, were the ones where he was actually given the 2 minutes and he looked at the camera and he told us what he was going to do. Were his words perfect? No. Did he stutter? Did he stumble? Yes. But he told us what he was going to do under, I think, very trying circumstances. I think Hillary did it better in 2016, but Biden's not Hillary. And so when he did it, I think he hit us with some honesty and with some stagecraft. But the problem was, when he wasn't looking at the camera, he was either looking at the moderator like, dude, do something, and you could see that in his body language, or he was looking at the president of the United States saying, shut the fuck up, man. Like, he was
pretty much said that.
There was a third Joe Biden look too, and it was more at the end of the night, but it was him looking down in a way that it almost looked like his eyes were closed. Like, he was just like, I'm fucking done with this. And
almost like he's like at a funeral for America.
God.
Well, seriously, but Carter, don't mean to derail you here.
But those are my points. Like, if it were me, I would tell him, stop looking at the president. Don't even look at him. It would drive him batty, not to have Biden interact with him. I wouldn't look at him at all. I'd look at the moderator and I'd look at the camera. Those would be my two focal points. And then I just wouldn't interact. I think that the weakening moments of Biden were where he started to call him names. He almost got into that whole deplorables thing. The basket of deplorables from Hillary Clinton. Anytime you're interacting with Trump and calling him names, you're sinking down to his level. I was disappointed that we didn't see a more presidential Joe Biden. And part of that was, you can't be presidential and in the same room as Donald Trump. No one has done it. No one can do it. So don't look at him. Don't interact with him. Focus on the moderator. Focus on your answers. If the moderator can't control him, stop talking. Just, that stagecraft of trying to talk over him. I don't know who coaches these candidates to just keep going. That to me is just lunacy on the stagecraft front. That's not the way it should be managed.
Corey, your thoughts on stagecraft, and perhaps let's start with what Carter said here. Would you have advised the same on just powering through and that sort of coaching, so to speak, for stagecraft? And what did you make of each candidate?
So when we talk about stagecraft, I really do mean the stage presence, I suppose, of the candidates, because one of the interesting things about the Commission for Presidential Debates, and I suspect it's because the colors become contentious and all of that, they've used the same set for over 30 years.
With the Constitution in the background.
1988 is when they started using it, and they continue to use it. But what the candidates brought to it was like I said, like from the start to the bottom, it was not good. Like the contrast between how orange Donald Trump's skin looked and how pale Joe Biden's skin looked, neither looked particularly good, right? But they looked bad in different ways. I actually caught myself thinking at one point, like, did Biden try to make himself look as white as possible, like as pale as possible, so that they would have to punch up the contrast to make Trump look even oranger than possible? Like, was this part of him trying to make him look like a literal clown? Like, I started getting, like, fifth dimensional in my thinking in a way that is just truly absurd. But yeah, I mean, they didn't look good in both of those cases. The prop that the president pulled out of a mask, being like, I got a mask, I wear a mask sometimes. This guy wears the biggest mask ever. Like, it's just the craziest thing.
Super freaking weird, yeah.
And I don't know, like Trump is doing the classic Trump lean, which you couldn't really see in the debate, but you could in the shots before, where he's like at a total angle going forward. Joe Biden at the end was very shaky, like literally shaking. You could see as he was there with Jill, which, did not, I mean, talk about a moment of adrenaline. I'd be shaking like a leaf myself. You know, you're just running on like the highest energy coming off the stage like that.
Yeah.
But, it just like they didn't, like the whole thing was just so bloody dire. And then like the fact that it was two men in their late 70s, really, like you felt that watching that debate.
I want to talk about content and I want to talk about strategy in a second. But before I get there, you guys have both picked up on something, which is these canned lines. Corey, I'm going to go to you before I go to Carter again, because he's almost given me a bit of his answer. Would you have suggested to Biden to have these off the cuff, you're a clown, shut up, man sort of lines to Donald Trump? Do you feel like his team planned him for that? Do you feel like that was just he just had to say it? What did you kind of make of that, and what was your read of that, so to speak?
I feel they were probably trying to set him up almost like a comedian has lines to deal with hecklers.
Yeah.
Like if he goes in this way, use this line. If he says this, use this line. Try to use humor. Try to keep it light at these moments. Try to make it Joe from Scranton, not too harsh. I think he failed at not making it too harsh at certain times. But I also just don't think the lines were particularly effective. It did, to Carter's point, sort of bring him down to his level in those moments. Although there were times where it was not lines, where he was just saying to like Wallace, like, what are we doing here? And, there was some moments, I think, of sincere exasperation that I didn't mind. I actually think his more natural seeming reactions were better. They were like, can I have that 30 seconds back? Can we just have him cut off? Like that to me was more like, this guy's not playing by the rules, where instead of this notion of kind of jumping outside of the rule box himself. Carter.
Yeah, your take on the lines too. What do you think?
Well, I think that Corey's right. I mean, the best lines were the ones delivered to the moderator or to the audience, not to Trump himself. You can't hurt Trump. You can't call him a name and have him be angry. In fact, Biden basically called him a racist, and Trump let it go. Just let it slide. Didn't say anything. I was watching it and I was like, man, how did that happen?
Yeah.
The question on race, he didn't even answer about race. He answered about carnage in the streets and law and order. I mean, it was really, really quite telling.
Partly I'd blame Wallace for that, because he literally said, I'm going to ask you about race. Feel free to say whatever the fuck you want, which I thought was insane for a moderator. Anyways, Carter, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was... Lines are good. Knowing what you're going to say is good. The difficulty is when you stick to your messaging religiously, right? When you get stuck in something, you're trying to find the word that you've lost and it's not there. There are about 15 different ways to say any sentence. The problem is, in the US, they've tested every way you should say it, right? So they've tested all the different ways and they want you to say it with this phrasing and this inflection. And I'm just not sure that Biden can do it. I'm not sure I could do it, to be honest. I mean, it's a
lot of pressure.
It's a certain theatrical trick to nail your lines every time. In improv, you're able to say, you know the structure of a story. I mean, Zain, you and I saw an improv play, and you got to be in the improv play in Toronto. You know, the structured story. She knows the line she's going to say, but she doesn't say it the same way every night. She gets you there. That's what Joe Biden needs. Biden needs to just get there. He can't be held to a script. Trump doesn't have a script. Trump doesn't have lines. Trump has no predictability. Who would have predicted some of the answers? I mean, yes, he has answered the forest fires and the climate change thing the exact same way for weeks. That's the type of stuff that if you know that type of structure is coming, don't worry about the specific words. Know what the sentiment is. And we're waiting for the sentiment from Biden. But he was flustered when he got questions from Bo, about Bo and Hunter. Mm-hmm. That upsets a father, right? You are more prepared to protect your children and your spouse than you are prepared to, than even to be president of the United States. This is not something that you just let go past, just because you want to win an election. He's not going to do that. So I'm finding that the canned lines a bit fake. I would just go back to the sentiment and give him a little bit more free wheel. He is who he is. He's not better when scripted. Just let him go.
Corey, anything to close us off on lines or reacting to what Carter said before I move on to the content of what we saw and then the strategies of each candidate?
So I disagree. I agree on the reaction lines. I just don't think you could tell actually when both candidates were trying to shoehorn in their responses that they had ready. The most awkward one for Trump by far was when he called Joe Biden dumb. And
talked about his college. Yeah.
That was idiotic because Biden was the only one up there. I mean, he was throwing facts around like crazy. It was kind of tough to look at it and say Joe Biden's dumb. But I think that Joe Biden's strongest parts were those 2-minute statements he made at the beginning of each of the sections. He put very well reasoned, succinct arguments forward that I largely thought, well, that's well constructed. You've created some guards against some obvious criticisms, and I think I think he's really got my hat off to him on those, and and for the preparation that must have taken, because it's hard to get that much information into your head and have such fluidity when you're going forward on it. And he failed in a couple of places, but nothing major. The thing, though, is when either candidate got hung up on their lines, it became almost impossible to sort of follow what the hell was happening. And they didn't react to each other at certain moments. And obviously the most extreme manifestation was they were talking over each other, but that was almost reacting too much to each other in most cases. But they needed to kind of, it's a combination. Like, it's funny, we're now, all three of us will have referenced this improv thing that Zain did. There was a theater, it was a nightly improv show where they grabbed somebody from the audience, and there's a story, but the story gets run through a little bit different. That actually is kind of the model. Like, you have your script, you have your lines, but you also have some fluidity. So I agree with that part of what Stephen said. I think that is kind of what you need to do. But you can't just give up the lines. I think much of what we will be talking about in the next few days will turn out to have been pre-planned lines.
Right. That will kind of make the headlines and will be part of the talking points and the narratives and the spin going forward. Let's talk about content, and let's start with some of the flashpoints, the big stones before we get into what I'd call some of the sand. And let's start with what happened last first, which is Carter, Donald Trump not condemning violence on the streets, not condemning, sticking to his lines around this peaceful transition of power, around the election being a fraud, around mail-in ballots being a fraud. Kind of incomprehensible what he was trying to say, but we did hear fraud loud and clear. We heard mail-in fraud loud and clear. Your general reactions, and were you surprised to hear it? And did you think this was Donald Trump's plan going forward? He knew this was going to be a big theme of the night. And do you feel like he delivered what he meant to say?
Well, I think this is, this is one of the interesting flaws of the debate commission and Chris Wallace's thinking. We'll make the electoral thing. We'll put that up on the agenda, and then we'll catch him, right? Because he's never going to be able to say in a debate what he's been saying on Twitter. He's got a moral code. that's going to stop him from saying.
Or we'll let him correct the record, so to speak.
We're going to let him correct it because no one can stand on a debate stage in front of 100 million Americans and say that the election's a fraud before it's even happened. I mean, my God, did he double down? Yes. Did he go further than he'd gone before? Yes. I mean, the finding ballots in the, selling ballots, finding ballots in the gutters, finding, like all of these things. And I'm just listening to it going, my God, it's lie. And this is one of the tweets where I put out is lie after lie after lie after lie. And he's now drawing this difference between a solicited ballot and an unsolicited ballot. I mean, in some states, it's all being conducted by mail. It's all unsolicited. In other states, they're trying to recognize that there's a COVID epidemic, a pandemic. This is something that's killed 200,000 plus Americans and it's just not going away. Half the states are still seeing massive increases in their caseloads. This is big. And so you're trying to make adjustments so that people can vote safely because voting is a right. Voting is the basis of the whole thing. And Trump just undermined it and undermined it. And he undermined it with lies and he straight-faced, bald-faced lied to the American people and no one called him on anything, right? Joe Biden's up there just saying, it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. But there is no, this is the trap that the questions themselves fall into. If you put a question up there that he's lied to before, thinking that he's going to somehow get caught in that lie, that's never going to happen. He lied and he lied and he lied. And now with the election in question and the Proud Boys being told to stand down and stand by, I'm greatly concerned that, the most heavily armed, population on earth, has now been given an indirect order from the commander-in-chief to be prepared for what happens after November the 3rd.
Sit on that for a second. We'll talk about the race question. Corey, I want to get your thoughts, though, on not condemning violence in the streets and accepting the election results and outright calling it a fraud and mail-in ballots a fraud.
Well, again, I don't know that we should be surprised. And I actually don't know what I feel like this is where I can criticize Chris Wallace a bit because it is the normal rules that you essentially put them on the spot, make them eat their own words, and they'll try to, disseminate and hem and haw and go back from them. He didn't do that. He gave inarticulate answers, but he basically said, yeah, I'm not committing to that. I'm not committing to, and then Wallace even pushed, you're not committing to no violence, to telling your supporters no violence in the streets. And he's like, nah, we'll see what happens with the election, and it's got to be a fair election, or whatever the hell he said there. Holy shit.
Could he push, should he have pushed harder, Corey?
I don't know. It was the very end. I don't know actually what else you could say. And it was actually kind of nice that then it went to Biden for the contrast. Can you commit to this? And he's like, yes, of course I can commit to this. But this was an example of where I think Biden was a little too beholden to his lines. And while he had a pretty strong, follow up there, and when he tried to calm people and say just go out and vote, Trump can't do this. I don't know if that's true, but it's a nice thought, and it's certainly comforting at this moment. But I think that Trump or Biden, that's a time where Biden should have taken the bait and said, hold on, Mr. President, you are saying you will not say let the judiciary and let the legislatures figure this out. You are saying violence in the streets is the answer. Is that what you're saying, Donald Trump? Because he did need to be pinned for that. And I suspect he will be pinned for that in the next couple of days. And he'll do Trump things like either say, the blood of tyrants, feeds the tree of liberty, or something far less articulate, right? But, we'll see. We'll see what the hell Donald Trump says. Maybe he'll try to back down.
In the words of Dwight Schrute, or in the words of Benito Mussolini, in the words of Dwight Schrute, blood moves the wheels of history. Stephen Carter, question for you on Corey's point. The passivity of Joe Biden on that. Should he have tried to hold Trump to account? Could this have been a knockout moment for Biden where he'd say, wait, what the fuck, man? You've said all this stuff, but this is this is like testing the democracy of our country. Should this have been a moment where Biden effectively played moderator rather than saying, oh, yes, I will agree to this, as like, not to say he was goody two shoes or whatnot, but we knew what his answer was going to be. Should he have added some texture to that moment?
I don't know. I mean, it's easy to, in the moment, or after the moment, come back and say, you know what, this is what Biden could have or should have done in that moment. It's happening so quickly, and it's so unexpected, I think, to see these, some of these statements. I suspect the Biden campaign's just going to start using those types of quotes and punching back after the fact. And I think that should be fine. I think that what tonight demands is a strong communications campaign from both of the campaigns, so that the narrative of who won is doesn't spin out from control, right? One of the things that happens immediately, there's one type of reaction of who won, and then in the coming days, the media, the advertising, this collective communication around us may change our minds on who won, because 100 million people may have watched this debate. They would have watched only a small segment of it. They may not have seen that. So I don't think that Biden needed to push back in that moment. I think the Biden campaign now needs to do the Biden campaign work. This all doesn't need to rest on the shoulders of the candidate. The candidate did the best he could. We could argue about whether or not the best he could is good enough. But the campaign has to now step in and step up and make sure that the world has seen these quotes and seen Trump's behavior in the clips moving forward.
Corey, he refused to condemn white supremacy. On the heels of that, Proud Boys Online is of course celebrating. Chris Wallace refused to follow up with him and press him on the issue. Asked him to say what he wanted, but once he didn't get it, Chris Wallace, that is, just moved on with Donald Trump. What do you think of that moment that we witnessed? And what did you think of both Wallace, Trump, and perhaps Biden's strategies in that particular moment and exchange?
Well, again, I disagree a little. Wallace did press him on it. Trump's first answer was, the real problems with the left. And he said, no. I'm asking you about... I can't remember his phrasing, but it was essentially white supremacist groups, and I can't remember what the other one was, like whatever he said there. And he dragged Trump back to it at least one time, if not two times. And then Trump said, yeah, well, I'm telling them to stand by or stand back and stand by, or something like that. That one to me is more what Carter was just talking about, of like, it's hard in the moment to figure it out. Like it took me a bit of processing, even like, myself watching at home, like, wait a minute, he said what, and then I started thinking more like stand by, like, oh my God. Cause at first I thought he was just inarticulately trying to find a way to say stand down without saying it, cause he's a coward. But instead it actually, like, I read it on first processing as he's a coward and he can't say the words, right? But instead it was actually worse. It was effectively, I'll let you know, Minutemen, when
you're needed. Yeah.
Two if by land, one if by sea, or whatever it is. Maybe it's the other way around. As far as Trump's answer, I do think it came from a fundamentally cowardly place. I actually don't know if he was intending to like raise white supremacists to his side, and I think that is the kind of thing that could really scare the hell out of the remaining moderate voters that we do have. That's a real possibility. And as far as Biden, I mean, that whole exchange on race was just it was so baffling. It was so befuddling. And it was a moment that I think it's pretty hard to say either side did particularly stellar on. Like it got into the muck with racial sensitivity training. Like literally he's, it went from that to racial sensitivity training. So, it's tough to say anybody did really well there, but it was such a confused mess. The whole debate was a confused mess, but that section to me was one of the most confused and most messy.
Yeah, but the whole racial sensitivity thing, I mean, he seemed to be taking it down the track of, racial sensitivity training just seems to hurt white people. Like that was the implied tone of that.
No,
and he
he
never finished it because he saw this is one of the moments where Trump actually saw Like, this is why I don't buy the whole, confused person all the time. Like, he's a confused genius of, stoking the anger, but he also does have a sense of what's too far. And he was going to go too far on that racial sensitivity piece, and he stopped.
Well, he was talking, interestingly enough, for those, because we're from a province called Alberta where this was just in the news, but he was talking about intersectionality at one point, right? He's saying, like, effectively, if you're not a member of a group, you're lesser, or something to that point, which is, which is obviously not what intersectionality is, but it was very clear that was the framework that he was driving at there, that he had a problem with in sensitivity training. And that will be funny to our Alberta listeners for all sorts of reasons. But for those of you in America, I mean, what was fascinating about that was effectively he was implying that racial sensitivity, talking about the fact that America had not always been this beacon of liberty in all cases, net positive, but definitely some dark spots. He described that as they were teaching people to hate our country, right?
Yeah.
And there's a real question as to the R there, I think, at a certain point. Like, there are some grim events in America's history, grim events in Canada's history, grim events happening now in Canada. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but there was a darkness there, I think, that was even subtext that, was consistent with the rest of his comments on race and his whistle it's not even a dog whistle. It was like a shrill calling a taxi in New York City whistle.
Do you remember
to
dog
Proud
whistles?
Boys.
Dog whistles were great.
Oh, man.
But dog whistles were great. Now we just get the full up, straight in your face.
Dog vuvuzelas.
Yeah.
Right now. So, I found this debate to clearly have the personality of Donald Trump. And what I mean by that is, every single time we record a podcast episode, we have so much to cover because so much news has happened in that week. And this 90 minutes was a microcosm of a Trump presidency, which is there was so much that happened. We just talked about the two big items right there, and we'll talk about the strategy for the candidates coming in and going out of this debate. But there's a lot else, and I want to see if you want to touch on anything. We had Trump talk about the $3.5 million payment that Joe Biden's son got from the mayor of Moscow, which, by the way, was context-free from Donald Trump, so we should all just assume what that was. Then we had COVID, and I want to talk about, for example, did Joe Biden do enough on the COVID file to draw a contrast? We also had Trump questioning Biden's intelligence. We had Trump saying that there's been no negative ramifications from holding his rallies in large numbers, except that Herman Cain died.
Herman Cain died.
Yeah. So
that's in my notes here. I was going to definitely bring that up.
What if what I've just said, or anything else you guys had on your notes that you wanted to pick up on or pick up any loose threads on? Because we could be here all fucking week if we do all of it. But what was salient in your mind that you want to pick up for today? Corey, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, there was kind of this consistent, just perpetually lie to move to the next thing. And the most telling exchange for me, I talked about this 90 minutes being a microcosm of Trump's political career. This exchange was a microcosm of the 90 minutes and by extension his career. When they were talking about taxes and the economy, and Trump turns to Joe Biden and says, "Why didn't you do that when you were vice president?" And he says, "Because I'm talking about repealing your tax bill that you passed." And he's like, "You're right, I got it done." I mean, so you had a combination of like an absolutely absurd charge.
I missed that.
No, that was great. That one left out.
Yeah, absolutely absurd charge. A totally sharp, watertight rejoinder to it, like a "you're a fucking idiot" response. And then Trump effortlessly pivoting to "I'm the shit. I am so good." Like not a moment passed between the end of Biden's comment. In fact, it probably started before the end of Biden's comment and Trump making his comment. But this is it. Like time and time again, he lied, he exaggerated, he pulled like some fact from some, subreddit that, got repeated by some sort of right-wing rag, and he just, he blew it up into these things. And, he played a lot on innuendo, and a lot of the things he referenced were just enough that if you Googled them, you would find right-wing articles about it. You would find things about these ballots, totally unproven in most cases, very isolated in other cases, deeply torqued in almost all. But he had this playbook that if I'm the Biden campaign, I am really taking note of. It's just this, there is no truth in this, and there's no point engaging with him because he is absolutely shameless about just lying and then saying like, "You're lying" afterwards. There's almost no point debating with him.
Carter, anything you want to pick up, either reacting to Corey or any of the laundry list of items I'd mentioned?
You guys are both right to list the laundry list. I think that Corey's example really did catch the summation of the debate. But I wanted to go back to the part of the debate when Trump was talking about Biden's sons, and Biden was talking about Beau and what Beau, how Beau had served, how he'd won the Bronze Star, and then he comes back and he tragically passes away. And Trump says, "Oh, I don't know that one. I just know Hunter." That was, to me, that encompassed a lack of humanity, a lack of empathy, a lack of humanness that borders on pathological. No, it doesn't border on pathological.
It is. Yeah.
It is across the border. It is the definition of pathological. How can a man stand beside a man who's lost his son and be so inhumane? I mean, and it struck me in that moment. It's probably when I began to feel sick, and I still feel sick as we're recording this podcast, because that type of stuff just doesn't leave you.
Well, let's talk strategy. I know it's a weird thing to talk about because we've been spending our time analyzing this debate, and usually strategy is the thing we have the most fun with, to kind of tease out what they should have done, what they did do. It just feels weird in this particular debate to do that, but I do want to do a bit of it. And Corey, maybe I'll start with you. Did the Trump playbook from what we saw today have to be the Trump playbook? Did he have no other choice other than to do the personal attacks, the lying, the interrupting, the let's throw the rule book out? Probably someone telling him that, sir, you are actually 6 to 8 points down in this race. You got to fucking do this. Was that I hate to say it right, but was that the correct strategy for Trump?
I don't think so. I believe in my very core there had to be a different way for him to go forward. And in fact, there were moments where I was reminded that Trump is a very talented communicator. There were kind of moments of just sort of sheer on your foot brilliant. I mean, the moment I'm not going to give his example may not hit that bar, but at one point Joe Biden was giving a list and he's like, number 1, number 2, and he got talked over by Trump and he went right to number 3. He's like, no, you're on number 2, right? And the way he delivered it and the way he kind of cut down Biden and reinforced a narrative about Sleepy Joe at the same time, yeah. There is a version of Trump that is still a prick. Yeah. That is not the sociopath that we saw tonight. Yeah. Right? There was a way, and when he talked about even chaos in the streets, when he talked about America's COVID response, look, he's wrong about America's COVID response, but he got a good line in with China, India, Russia. They don't exactly give you straight counts. That was a great line. Mm-hmm. There is a version of Donald Trump that is a human that could have been out tonight.
Carter, question for you. Did this have to be the Trump playbook? What we saw tonight, did he have to do this? Is this what you would have advised?
I think you asked a version of this question earlier in a different podcast, either last week or the strategist.
That was when we were speculating what he'd do, but now we saw it. Yeah.
And I said, I don't think you can coach him. I don't think you can get him to go do anything except what comes naturally and by instinct. And this is what happens when you cage an animal, when you cage a politician that is, not a capable politician. Let's be clear, right? This is not a politician we look at and say, this guy's really got politics figured out. He's not good. And this is all we can get from him. This is his best performance. This isn't a strategic performance. This isn't a performance that could have been something else. This is all he can do. Period. End of sentence. So let us move away from this idea that this was strategic, that there was some sort of thought put into this. Who do you think trained him to do this? Who do you think sat down in a room and said, you know what, just keep talking. I'll play Biden, but you just keep talking. Try and knock me off my game. None of that's planned. None of that's thought through. There were some lines that were definitely thought through. He would have read a briefing book or been walked through a briefing book at some point. But this is the best. This is the best we could see from a person who is not a politician, who should never have been elected president of the United States.
Carter, our Biden playbook, I think it's safe to say for all of us in general agreement, was be presidential, don't take the bait, refuse the pressure and the desire to go down rabbit holes. We saw some of that. We saw him fail on some of that. What did you make of the Biden strategy today? Did you feel like it was what we thought it would be, and did you feel like he executed it well?
I think it could have been a lot better. I think that he wants to be the guy from Scranton. I want him to be the president of the United States. Those are two very different roles. And the scrappy guy from Scranton who, calls Trump names and belittles him, just does nothing for it. I mean, he didn't perform nearly as badly as Trump. Let's not make this the false equivalency of some of the Twitterati. But surely he's got to realize that we're electing the president of the United States. And the beauty of being the vice president of the United States is that you get to be a little bit more scrappy. Him spending 8 years being the vice president of the United States has not gotten him ready for the 4 years that he needs to be the president. We need him to be the president in the next debate if he chooses to go.
Corey, same question to you. The Biden playbook, do you feel like he was aligned with what we were saying in previous episodes, and do you feel like he executed it well?
He executed parts of it well. And listen, all credit to Joe Biden. Just the fate of America, no pressure, right?
Yeah,
I can only imagine what it's like to go on that stage. And he is not a young man, as we've all talked about. But I will say this. I personally left that debate. Maybe it was never fair of me to have these concerns. Maybe I just fell into that Trump narrative. But if I was worried about his cognitive faculties, I wasn't after that debate. The number of facts he threw out, his command of the issues. I mean, he stuttered sometimes, but we already know he's a stutterer, right? And I mean, there was one person on that stage who I had confidence digested their briefing book and knew what the hell they were talking about, and it was not Donald Trump. So in that sense, I think it was very effective by Joe Biden. Now, unfortunately, it was patchy, and let's be real, that was a rough watch. I wanted to turn that off a lot. And the only reason I didn't is because here I am. And, and I've got another media hit tomorrow. So I want to make sure that I've actually seen this thing that we're talking about. But the first few minutes were very bad for Joe Biden. He came out very shaky. And it took, I would say, till the end of the first segment, if not the second segment, for him to kind of find his energy. And in a funny way, he needed Trump to be an enormous dick for a bit, because it's when he got angry, you could tell that he kind of got into a moment where he's like, okay, well, go time. And so in that sense, Scrappy Joe came to scrap, and he needed to get that. In some ways, I wish that somebody had slapped him in the face before the debate started and got that energy right from the beginning, because my concern is his best moments came probably, sections 2 through 4. And I don't know how many people stuck around after section 1. It was yikes, big time yikes. Like, if you're not a partisan and if you're not just enjoying the blood sport of it, like, who's going to turn that on? That was terrible. And, as I said on Twitter, like, I would have been like, it's a bad presidential debate when you're hoping your kids don't walk into the room and see you watching it, right? Like, wow. It was a rough time. And so if they didn't stick around to see Joe Biden over the breadth of it, they might not have gotten the impression of Joe Biden that we needed them to get.
Carter, quickly here, you're acting for Trump and you're acting for Biden, so you're putting a double strategist hat on with this question. Which segment or what key moment are you clipping for your social and digital channels in the days and perhaps weeks ahead? What was your highlight if you're Team Trump, and what was your highlight if you're Team Biden? What are you extracting from this debate and putting out on the interwebs and putting out in ads, etc.?
I don't know. I mean, I think that the Team Biden piece, I liked some of the climate change piece, but at the same time, he came out against the Green New Deal, and I think that's going to maybe hurt him in the long run. I think that his response on COVID was pretty strong, except he got kind of defensive at certain pieces. So there's small pieces to pull out of probably every segment if you're Biden, and clip them up and give the people what they want. If I'm Trump, I'm probably going to clip the parts of being scolded by Chris Wallace and just say, I couldn't have possibly won that debate. The debate was totally stacked against me.
Interesting.
I did the best.
Media argument.
Oh yeah. I mean, the lamestream media is Trump's real enemy, which is unbelievable. This was Fox News. This was the Fox News debate, right? Like, this is as good as it's going to get for Trump.
Corey, same question to you. What are you clipping if you're each of these campaigns after watching tonight?
Well, if I'm Donald Trump, I had a couple of good lines. We've talked about a couple, but when the stock market goes up, that means jobs. I would be clipping more the moments where Joe looks confused. There were a few, and they could be used out of context to reinforce that narrative about Joe Biden, because again...
Which they have before, yeah.
Which they have before, and there were moments in this one that where he stammers, he kind of goes, he needs to gather his thoughts. Even, I think, two, where the moderator said, actually, the question was about X. And for one of them, he had a pithy response where he said, I mean, he's just been rambling. I can't even tell where we are anymore, right? But there was another one where he just sort of looked like he lost the plot. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, no, like I could talk about that. Almost like he's a speak and spell and you just had to hit him to the right setting. And so that was a bit problematic for me. If I am Joe Biden, I just firmly believe his strongest segment was on COVID because of both the subject matter and his delivery of it. And he had one line that I do think will stick. I hope it sticks. I mean, with all of the shit that was thrown around, maybe it won't. But he said on COVID, because, it is what it is because you are who you are, right? Referencing Donald Trump saying it is what it is. I also think that as much as it was meant as an attack on Biden, his comments about Hunter, and he's like, he had struggles with drugs and he cleaned them up and I am proud of him. I thought that was a really powerful moment. And I think there are a lot of Americans who have people in their lives who have struggled with drugs or depression or any number of issues. And that's going to resonate with them. And if you wanted a moment where Donald Trump looked like an absolutely despicable human being and Joe Biden looked like a compassionate human, that was the moment. And I would be bundling those two things up.
Let's end this with some strategy recommendations going forward. Carter, your team Biden, you saw what happened. What's the playbook for the next one? Is it more of the same? Are you tweaking more? I know we've discussed some of the items here as to what the improvements are. Package it up for me very quickly.
I mean, I'm not sure that the Biden campaign's going to agree with this, but for me, it's about, stop interacting with Trump. He is a cesspool. If you touch him, you will be dragged in. You will be dragged into the crap that he is. So don't do it. Focus on the moderator. Focus on the camera. The camera is the American people. The moderator is the ticket to the American people. I would not. I would drive Trump absolutely mad. And I think that Hillary did this. Why did Trump move behind Hillary? Because she was focused away from Trump. And I think that put him off. So I would probably take that technique.
Corey, same question to you. What's the Biden playbook going forward? What are you repairing? What are you tweaking? What are you looking at?
Well, I think the first thing you're doing behind the scenes is you're calling the Commission on Presidential Debates and you're having a very sweary conversation with them, saying, what the F was that? You guys have got to control them. That wasn't a debate. That was a clown car. And we are all going to be laughingstocks. You're going to be laughingstocks. The president's going to be laughingstocks. I'm going to be a laughingstock. That has got to be tightened up significantly. You've got to talk to your moderators. You've got to get some things in line. I don't know what the rules of the debate they agreed to are. I suspect they probably do say we won't cut mics, right? But it might be worth saying you got to cut mics, even though it's not in the rules, and just dare him to walk off the stage because he's acting like a child. Now, the next debate is a different format. It is a town hall debate. And that presents, you can't take your learnings of this debate into the next debate. And so I agree with Carter's thrust, but I would just remind that it's not about talking to the American people. It's about talking to the people in the room. I would ignore the hell out of Donald Trump in that room. I would definitely make sure that my people are clear with the commission that he will not be lurked over by Donald Trump. That needs to be stopped immediately. There's one thing that I think, is a bit small, but it's that Joe Biden is a bit small relative to Donald Trump, who's a big, imposing man. And so it's not just a bad visual when it's Hillary Clinton there. And this is your time to go compassion up to 11 and just disregard him. Like if it's anything like the town hall that Trump had on ABC, he will do more than enough self-inflicted harm. You should go and show that you are a compassionate fellow that you are.
Carter, Trump, same question. You have your post-game analysis. You're trying to do your spin. Your people are doing what they do. You said you can't control him, but let's say you can maybe perhaps nudge him in a direction. What's one or two pieces of tangible advice you're giving Donald Trump for that next town hall format? Thanks for mentioning that, Corey. Town hall format debate.
Well, I probably would just tell Trump that he can argue with the moderator. He can argue with Biden. He cannot argue with the audience. And that's probably all I could hope for, right? Arguing with the moderator is on brand. Arguing with Biden is everything. But arguing with the people who ask him the question is just going to get him into trouble. It's one thing to show that lack of humanity towards Biden, but show that lack of humanity towards a person in the audience who's asking you a question. Mm-hmm. That could have real ramifications for Trump. So that's probably the single piece of advice I would give him. One thing to focus on, because I don't think you can get any more than that.
Corey, same question to you to wrap up this segment. A couple tangible pieces for Team Trump if you're on that squad.
I would call a meeting of all of the senior staff. I would say this is a threat to the Constitution and the country, and we all need to quit right now, and this guy's got to go straight to hell. He can't be saved. This guy is a wreck of a human being, and the only good advice at this point is to disengage from the game if you're anywhere near him. You will go down in history as a shame and an embarrassment to your children and your children's children if you continue on this train. History will not be kind to Donald Trump. I have no doubt about that.
Let's move it on to our last segment, our overrated, underrated. Guys, are you ready?
Yes.
Let's start here. Stephen Carter, I'm going to you first. Overrated or underrated debate moderators?
I think you have to go with underrated. I mean, what a thankless job, trying to keep this all on track. And given that the rules seem to be that there are no rules, that was hard. And I kind of feel bad for Chris Wallace, because I actually predicted in The Strategist that he would be the winner of tonight's debate. And my 100% success rate continues. So
you were nailing. I'm so glad we're at the point where you just bring up your own failures. This is good. We don't even have.
This is nice.
Yeah,
it's self-policing. It's good.
That's right. Corey, same question to you. Debate moderators, overrated or underrated?
So my success rate, by the way, is pretty good. I said that the winners were the people who didn't watch the debate. I think that it is absolutely an underrated role. It really determines whether. And I don't even know if you've asked me this question before. Maybe I said overrated before, but I doubt it. But tonight really reinforced that the moderator, the rules are just words on paper. If the moderator can't hold them to it, it doesn't mean anything. So a strong moderator is absolutely vital. And I do think there are a number of moderators who, as bad as that was, we would be more beside ourselves if it was them.
It's fine, Corey, even if you've answered differently before. We've both, all three of us have said consistency is underrated on this podcast, and we've shown that through our actions. Carter, I'm going to you again. Canned lines in a debate. We talked about a few of them that each of the candidates gave. Canned lines in a debate. In the 2020 context, in the Trump context. So let me contextualize this. Overrated or underrated?
Oh, God. I think they're overrated. I think that the sentiment is the direction to go. I don't believe that any of Trump's lines were canned, and yet they're going to get just as much airplay as Biden's lines that were. I would love to believe that some of the great lines in debating history weren't canned, but I'm pretty certain that most of them were. So I guess I'm kind of hypocritical on it, but I personally don't like them. I prefer to see the candidates as they are. So I'm going to stick with overrated.
Corey, same question to you. Canned lines, overrated, underrated?
Underrated. People have this vision of politicians as these brilliant wits who can just riff these things at a moment's notice. But in fact, most are field tested before. They're written by an army of consultants and strategists. And they seem larger than life so often because they're not one person. They're the cumulative work of many, many people. And if you don't have a delivery mechanism like canned lines, you don't have it. So there's no doubt there are transcendent candidates who are wits on their feet, but even wits on their feet, if they're using their greatest hits, will have a better debate performance than those who rely entirely on their thinking in the moment. It's like almost anything else that's a high stakes thing, whether it's a negotiation or a a debate, not of this format, but like debate, the more prep you do, knowing exactly what you're going to say, the better you're going to be.
Corey, after watching this for 90 minutes, for most Americans, they clearly saw what we did. A lot of disgust, a lot of just appalling behavior that they saw. So I guess that brings up the natural question, Corey, Canada, overrated or underrated?
Underrated. Canadian passport, underrated. Go get yourself one if you can, because this is the cool place to be. And I look forward to inviting the intelligentsia diaspora from America if this asshole wins the election.
Carter, same question to you. Canada, overrated or underrated?
It's underrated. I mean, Canada is right here, guys. Just cross the border. Well, never mind. Don't actually cross the border. You're not allowed.
Yeah, we love you, America. We sincerely do. All of us do. I'm that jerk who had an American flag up on his wall when he was in his 20s. But yeah, you know what? You're having a moment, and it's kind of freaking us the fuck out.
Yeah, and of course, in typical Canadian fashion, I'll just say sorry for our self-aggrandizement of our own country. We promise we won't do it again. We'll leave it there. That is our special episode of You the People this week. My name is Zain Velji. With me, as always, Corey Hogan, Stephen Carter. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.